I'm going to be responding to the advocate's claim that fracking has been shown to have significant negative impact on the environment, given the reasoning that one, fracking leads to the contamination of water sources, two, the fracking process creates geological instability and a disturbance to the fracking sites, and three, air pollution is caused by fracking. Firstly, I want to address the fact that in my advocate's argument, he stated that the water contamination wasn't due to fracking itself, but rather due to bad staffing, I guess. That the workers were doing a bad job of sealing the holes or whatever in the piping, and it was getting into the water sources of the city's water source. However, I found an article in 2011 that said that geochemical and isotopic features for water were measured in the shallow wells from both active and non-active areas are consistent with historical data and inconsistent with contamination from mixing Marcellus Shale Formation water or saline fracturing fluids, which in itself means that there's no contamination. The second claim that the fracking process creates geological instability and a disturbance to the fracking sites. He had said that it's causing earthquakes in places that have never had earthquakes. However, it's widely known that there are earthquakes happening all over the world several hundred times a day. But I think that the advocate was meaning more along the lines that there's no epicenters near the places where the fracking is occurring, or that there are, rather, sorry. But there have been several studies that have shown that fracking typically does not cause earthquakes, though there have been a few exceptions. Carbon Matrix, a professional environmental consulting company, stated that mean microseismicity as a result of the hydraulic fracturing was imperceptible to at the surface. USGS studies have indicated that hydraulic fracturing did not cause increased seismicity in the mid-continent United States. With regards to the third claim, that air pollution is caused by fracking, I don't believe there's actually much of an argument here. The whole purpose of fracking is to release gases, and that's what's happening. However, there are current regulations by the South Coast Air Quality Management District for the Inglewood oil field that prohibit uncontrolled venting of gas to the atmosphere, which effectively mitigates the effects of hydraulic fracturing during well completion. So in conclusion, I don't believe that fracking is as detrimental as the advocate makes it seem, that fracking doesn't contaminate water sources because there are, sorry, I'm having brain fart. There's no evidence to prove that there's contamination in the water. That it doesn't affect microseismicity, except for maybe a few occasions, but there may have also been other things influencing that. And third, that there isn't really an argument with regards to pollution because that's the purpose of fracking. Thanks.
All right, well, you label the claims pretty clearly. On each individual one, you have some good counterclaims and evidence, although on the first point, an article in 2011 is not a very clear source citation, and who's responsible for reaching that conclusion would probably be helpful to build some credibility on it. On the second point, I don't remember what the advocate's evidence on this particular point was, but I think you can contrast pretty effectively with the U.S. Geological Service suggesting that it's not really contributing to earthquakes in the middle part of the United States, and I think that kind of contrast would give you a little bit more credibility. Although you do seem to acknowledge, look, it's possible that there would be some residual effect because people are in the area when an explosion goes on, but the truth is most of that happens far below the surface where anybody could hear it, and it's imperceptible. I think you might also point out that the advocate never showed that there was any harm from any earthquake that was ever even closely associated with fracking, so that the fact that the ground trembles doesn't necessarily mean anything more than it would if somebody who is really heavy walked by you. I think that that's maybe the way you want to make that comparison, not denying that there's an impact, but denying that the impact means much. On the third point, you got to be careful about conceding, well, the purpose of fracking is to create air pollution. That's not its purpose. The purpose is to release the gases there. Now, that the gases are polluting, that is a possibility, although I do think that there's an argument that says the natural gases as a fuel source, for instance, are substantially less polluting than other kinds of fuels. Thank you. That was a little creepy. Substantially less polluting than other kinds of gases that we might be dependent on if we didn't have the resources available through fracking. I did think that you had one example here of how it's regulated and how they don't just release the gases into the atmosphere. They have to be controlled in some way. And there ought to be, and I think you need a more general argument that talks about pollution controls that would mitigate any of those particular harms. You had a pretty good summary at the end. I know you got caught in a couple of spots and sometimes stalled out, but you need to be a little bit more assertive about making your declarative claims and be careful about saying some of the things. Well, it seemed to me like you were conceding information on point 2 and point 3 that probably didn't need to be conceded, and you need a little bit more contrast. Thank you.